And we're all set. Okay, so everyone should be able to now see the screen that is displayed, which is the one for TM. Again, if you have any questions, use the chat. You want to speak up, just unmute yourself and speak up too. So again, what we're doing today is we're basically going to log in as the TS07 because we're still focusing on an STO scenario. So for this case, it was an FCA Incoterm and an intermission transfer. And what we learned is that we have, when in terms of managing FOs, the responsibility is split when we're using an FCA Incoterm. So we have the issuing plant's TS07 and the receiving plant's TS07 that is going to be, that they're both going to be managing the freight orders that are assigned to them. So the first thing we do is to understand which freight orders are assigned to us. Remember, we go to the Freight Order Management tab, click on Freight Orders. Here to see the overview freight orders, and then when we get to this screen, what we do is we search by either our freight order or any other type of field we see here. Again, I suggest you always go to change query and make sure that you add here all the way at the bottom. You make sure you add here either your outbound delivery document or your STO, which in this case, we are still using the outbound ending in 09 here. Click on apply, and as the TS07 of, in this case, the issuing plant, we're going to see that we have a freight order here assigned to us, okay? Just one single one. Remember, if you were in yesterday's session, we have at least 3. The other 2 are going to be in the overview freight orders box for the TS07 in the receiving plant. So right now, we're basically managing the first FO, which belongs to the pre-carriage stage. We have information linked to it. We see that the activities here, first activity was what the system returned once we planned the FOs, and our last activity represents the changes that we've made. Remember that we changed the port location in the main carriage from the original one to a different one, so we have a change here in our last activity. We also learned a bit on how to display from the results page the cost of each one of these freight orders. So basically, if you remember that, we went to open settings dialog and we looked for the hidden column that was related to the price. So basically, let's look for that one again. I don't remember the name of it exactly, but we can search for it here quickly. And that was very useful because we at least had an idea of the actual price, so the cost of this particular freight order. Let me see if I can find it here. If not, I'll just perform a quick search. And I know it was related to documents, so let me just go by the search. Just sometimes I know the filter doesn't work that well. So I know this was, I believe the word document was there. And of course, I don't get any results there. So again, I think it was right by the end here. Weight, loading volume, total net duration, calculation level, subcontract, net amount in document currency. Okay, so this was the actual hidden column that we didn't have displayed. Let's put that right at the beginning here. We push it over to the displayed columns, and now we should have an extra column here that displays our net amount in document currency, which is the actual cost of the freight order. Okay, so that was very useful for us to understand what it's going to cost us to transport these goods from Unimid to the destination location, which is the handover location, which is Mombasa Port. Okay, that is basically the price. And now the first thing we would have to do, since our carrier is assigned, we would have to start submitting events. So remember, there are 2 ways of submitting events. One would be, of course, through TM, which is the one that is linked to the responsibility of the TS07 or TS01 if this were a UNOE scenario. So we could basically just click on this particular freight order, and once the freight order displays, we can start submitting events in the execution tab. So we just look for that execution tab, click on it here, and we would have a set of documents that we have to start submitting events for. Okay, that would be the responsibility of the TS01 or TS07, depending on the scenario, to submit events through TM. Those who submit events through CCP are, again, the carriers, right? So vendors and freight forwarders. Remember, CCP looks like this right here, and you should all be seeing this on screen. So I already logged in, and I see that I have a total of 149 freight orders. and I can access this if I were a freight forwarder or a vendor that would have to submit events for a specific freight order. And to do this, the carrier or freight forwarder would basically search by adding the STO or PO or even freight order number that they're responsible for. And once we add that information here, we would see our freight order and the one we're supposed to manage. Okay, again, this is not the responsibility of TS07 or TS01. Only carriers, freight forwarders, and vendors would be able to access this page and start submitting events. So let's say I'm going to search for my STO, in this case, in this page, and I'm going to launch a question in the next minute. Okay, so I'm going to add here my number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 8, and click on enter. And it tells me that I have no data. Okay, so basically, if I'm the freight forwarder or vendor here, and I log into CCP, I put in the STO number that was provided to me, that was in the SOW, now I see no data. So basically, what could be the reason for seeing no data here? Yeah, I did everything correctly. I added my STO or my PO, and now I have no data. So what's going on? Why is that I cannot see my freight order for this one? Because if I take a look at my freight order here, let me go back to it. It seems like the carrier is assigned, right? Okay, so Sasha, no carrier is assigned for the freight order. That could be one reason, exactly, but there is a carrier assigned, right? It's UNAMA here. So why can't I see it? If there is, there you go, okay, because it's a UN carrier, okay? So the carrier here is UNAMA, so basically we're assigning this to the entity itself. So the only ones who will have access to seeing this freight order are planners, right? So TS01, TS07 would be able to see these freight orders, but where? In TM, not in CCP, because again, we don't have access to it. So it's not a commercial vendor, exactly, Sasha. Okay, so you see that if we go back here and we have no results, that is quite strange. So let's do this. Let me eliminate this. Go back to my home page. I see 149. If I go back here and now I select this freight order and now I change the carrier, let's say that the carrier is now going to be a freight forwarder, all we would have to do is simply change the assigned carrier because we haven't started submitting events yet. And we have our carrier section here. We can simply click on the matchbox and we can search by name if we don't know the exact BP number and say, okay, I know it had the word logistic somewhere in it. And when we click on the search, we have a series of vendors, freight forwarders here. I always use the Scan Global Logistics, so I'm adding this one. I click on OK, and I refresh because it still says Carrier UNAMA. And in this case, now I'm going to get Scan Global Logistics. So now, if we went back to CCP, it still says 149 here. If I basically refresh this screen, it should change to 150. Okay, and there it is. All right, and now if I click on this because I did it correctly and I actually search for my STO in my PO, I'm going to be able to see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I should be able to see at least one freight order, and there it is. Okay, now I have access to it and I can see it. Okay, so that's the first thing I wanted to bring up, okay, basically, so we understand this. I know a lot of you already know this, but some of you may still be a bit confused as to who submits events, how these freight orders are seen in CCP, and so on. Okay, so basically I can leave this one here just for the purpose of seeing the communication between TM and CCP, but remember that if we had left our UNAMA carrier here, we would only have to submit events in TM. We wouldn't have to submit events in CCP. Nonetheless, even if Scan Global Logistics is assigned to this freight order, the TM planner would have the possibility, or actually could submit all the events on behalf of Scan Global Logistics in TM as well. Okay, so it could be done on both sides or just on one side. Okay, so the reason why Scan Global Logistics can actually see the freight order here in CCP, and this is something I want to go over. I think you guys may know this, you guys may not, you may have received this information. I know the hubs have been sending out these presentations here, and I'm going to share this on this screen. You guys should all be able to see this PowerPoint that I'm displaying now, the Transportation Management Contact Person RFS process overview. We should all have this PowerPoint, and this will help you understand what the process is to provide, right, or obtain the access to CCP by the vendors or freight forwarders. So basically this presentation, and if you don't have it, we can share this one with you after the session, explains how to request this submission, right, and the process to do so. And I just want to go over this quickly for the first few minutes of the session, so you guys understand how this is done. So I know we haven't covered this in any other session, but I know that these presentations were shared. So basically, the requests are submitted by procurement officers via the NDM ISEEK page in accordance with the master data governance process as noted in the following link. So you can basically just click on this link, which will take you directly to the site for ISEEK, where you will find the both info path and the Excel. Okay, and hopefully it doesn't crash on me, and we should have here, there you go. So it's automatically opening up our page, takes us to our ISEEK page, and we basically just have to scroll down to the section where we see transportation management, which is right here. Transportation Management MDM templates, and we see here Transportation Management Contact Person. And we have both the info path and the Excel that we should be populating and then submitting both forms to umojamdm@un.org here. So it's quite self-explanatory. I recommend you guys take a look at this. So these requests are submitted by procurement officers. And again, we access this link, and then the request, as we see here, must include transportation management info path form and the completed Excel document. Okay, both provided in the link above, as you can see. Those are the ones that I was just showing here, these two links here. Okay, and then 3 work orders will be created automatically assigned to the following groups. Okay, very important for you guys to understand the process. Requests that are not properly submitted are not assigned to the correct support groups, and related work orders are not created. Info path form, Excel document, sample RFS, and work orders are provided in the following slides as examples. Okay, so this PowerPoint will show you some screenshots of the info paths and Excel forms, okay, and the instructions as to how to fill them and the limitations of each one of these forms. So up to 5 contact persons per action, 1 form per commercial BP, drop-down selections as noted. Okay, basically, I recommend you take a look at this presentation, okay, the instructions on page 2 of the info path, and then some instructions on the Excel file as well, how to add the information. So separate worksheets for creating contacts, and the instructions as well, separate worksheets for updating the contacts, and separate worksheets for expiring contacts. Okay, you also have the Excel instructions for creating a contact person, and the information on that is here as well. Okay, so basically, I recommend you guys take a look at this, understand how the process is done, and if you encounter any issues, we can reach out to us and let us know what's going on here. Okay, so basically you see the step 1 also in slide 13. You even have it broken down by steps. Work orders are assigned to EIDMS support. OICT reviews the RFS. Then we have the creation for the request, for expire or update request, and the steps one by one. So I think this is quite self-explanatory. Okay, I recommend you guys take a look at this. Okay, I can share this with you guys if you don't have it in your inbox. Okay, just basically wanted to go over that quickly so you guys would understand how now logistics, the Scan Global Logistics, can actually access CCP and submit events for this freight order. That's because the process that I was just showing you step by step was performed correctly, and somebody in the company is now having the access to CCP to submit the events. Okay, so that was just a brief overview of the process to add a contact person and providing the role for CCP access for vendors and freight forwarders. Now we're back to our TM freight order, and let's start by clicking on the freight order again, and let's start submitting some events and seeing how that is done. And also, while I submit some events, expected, unexpected, add notes and attachments, if you guys have any situation you have encountered in production that you've done something particularly, or I'm saying something that is not 100% accurate as you have experienced in production, just stop me as I'm going through it and let me know. Okay, so we'll start with some basic submission of expected events. So one of the main things here is to understand our screen. So under the execution tab, we have a series of events. All the ones that are displayed here are expected. Okay, we're always going to see displayed expected events. In TM, we're going to see these all together, whether they are linked to the origin location or the destination location. Okay, so this would be the source mission, the issuing plant would have a series of events to submit, and then the handover location events are also here all displayed together. In CCP, if we go back here and we click on the freight order, we'll see that the actual events are broken down into sections. So we have the one for Zalingi here, and then we have Mombasa divided. Okay, so we have our events for each divided into sections. In TM, we have them all together. So basically, we also have the plan date, so they're always set up in chronological order. We have our time zones that we can also change if we want to have all the time zones according to our own. It's important that we can set this up by clicking on the settings icon here and making sure that we select either the user time zone, individual time zone, use location specific time zones, and basically not many more options here, but we can set up our individual time zone here instead. I'll click on OK. So you guys, I recommend you play around with that a bit and see how that will change the time zones for yourself. Maybe if I click again here and remove this check mark and just keep the individual time zone, I'll have a switch here. So you see now they're all time zones are the same for me. So I can understand the time is the one that is linked to myself. Okay, so you guys can play around with this and see how you can even select individual time zones here from the matchbox and see which one is your time zone. Once you select that and click on OK, you'll have your time zone set up. Okay, so if I want to submit my first event, okay, I have a message here from Sasha. I have, but it's related to inbound. So once you finish, I'll ask. Okay, all right, Sasha. So yeah, once I'll submit a couple of them and then we'll see what you're mentioning here. So if we want to start submitting expected events, you guys see already the difference between the yellow icons here and some of the red icons. So the red ones basically mention overdue events. The yellow ones should, especially for the one on the 16th of December. You also see the arrival at destination are fine, but it's surprising because it's the 19th, so they should all be overdue events because today is the 20th. Okay, basically you can submit the events nonetheless, even though they're overdue events. We can do that by clicking on Edit. And once we have access to these, we can simply select the line and click on Report Event. If we do that directly without making any changes, the system is going to take this event and the time that it is now 11:19 in my time zone and the actual date as the reported date. If we want to make changes to that, we can and say, you know what, this actual event happened on the 16th, the way it was planned. You can do that as well. Click on Enter, and that will keep your date now here. You can still select it and report it, and it will maintain this. See, now I put it all the way at the top because I changed the date. For this same event, if I select this line, if you see below, there are two sections, execution and note, where we can add some information related to the event reason, which is basically just notes that you're adding to a specific event. You can make the changes to the dates here and the times here as well. So here, if I add an event reason and I say that document was received, this message is now linked to this custom clearance document. And when I go into CCP, I'll be able to see this event reason also in CCP. Okay, we can report the event, make sure that that is saved. We can click on Save to make sure that there are no more changes, so the data is saved successfully. And we can move on to our next event, which is loading begin. Okay, so again, you can just simply report the event, or you can add the date first and say, you know what, it was on the 18th. You can even add the time that it was submitted on. Let's say it was 8 p.m. And when we report the event, that will also show. Okay, so we have our loading begin that shows on the 18th and the time. Okay, so you can do one or the other. Just simply click on report, which will basically keep the date and time that it is now, the time and date that you're submitting it, or edit that first and then click on report. To basically submit all the events, no matter what you do, you always have to click on report so that the system takes it as a submission. Okay, the loading begin, we can say that loading begin, no issues to report. I'm just writing this so you guys can see it in CCP later on, and we'll click on report the event. That's fine. Okay, so basically now we have our custom clearance loading begin events submitted in TM. We have loading end and departure, so we can say that our loading end was fine and it happened also on the 18th. And we can say that it ended at 9 o'clock. Let's say that there was an hour. We select this, click on report, and now our loading begin is there as well. Okay, and now with the reported event green color. The only thing we'd be missing is our departure. Now this departure event is actually an event that will launch a notification. Okay, there are a number of events, for example, departure and arrival, that will launch notifications to the TM planners and also to the carriers and freight forwarders so that they know that critical events like departure and arrival have been submitted. Okay, others like loading begin and custom clearance will not launch a notification. All right, this notification is basically an email notification that will be received by the vendor freight forwarder or the TM planner in their inbox, and they'll know that a critical event has been submitted. These notifications are also launched with unexpected events. So any unexpected event we submit will launch a notification, no matter how many we submit. But for expected, it's only events like departure and arrival, like critical events. Okay, where basically, if you want to understand it, it's events that we can lose track of. Let's say if the ship has set sail or the plane has taken off, anything can happen in between the takeoff and landing or the ship sailing and arriving at port. So that's why these critical events launch notifications. Okay, so we have our departure here. We have our loading begin and our loading end. We can also say that loading end has no issues and report that. And if we want to insert an unexpected event in TM, maybe before departure, we can even say, okay, let's see, insert event. And this will add a new line on your event table, and you see that there's an icon here for unexpected event. We click on the drop down and we see that we have a series of unexpected events that we can select from. We can say delay, maybe there's a delay in the departure, okay? So we can say it here. You see there's no planned date. The actual event date is here as well. We can say, we can change that to the 19th as well, and we have our time. Say that it was maybe the time is 23. Let's just use that. And we also have to specify the location. Since it's a delay in the departure, we would have to set the UNAMID location instead of the Mombasa port, because this we're talking about the delay in the departure, not in the arrival. All right, in the event reason, we can mention it here, delay in departure. And we can now report that event. And there you go. It's going to go all the way to the bottom here because, again, it's the latest event. It's unexpected and it's been submitted. Okay, so we have our delay here with delay in departure. So far, we've submitted all events, expected and unexpected, for the first portion of our, let's say, route, right? So the one is still linked to the source location, which is UNAMID. Now, before I go to CCP, and I see how that's reflected in CCP. Let me take a look at the chat. I see here, I cannot see your screen. No, is that the case for everybody? All right, so I probably not, because I'm sure I would have had a flooded chat there. So Shumaila, yes, listen to Elena. I think that using another browser will probably allow you. Okay, it's okay now. Perfect. All right, very good. So we have our events here submitted. Now, Sasha, do you want to jump in now before I show CCP?
Sure, I can. It's not a big deal. I had this case which was X-Works, and based on what I recall from training, is once you enter the proof of delivery, all the previous stages should be completed. One thing I can't really share, let me just take the snapshot and then I'll give it, you can share it there. Maybe I did something wrong, but it would be nice to understand it.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
I do remember you may be right, because I remember during pit testing, sometimes we would submit our proof of delivery document in the last freight order and it wouldn't close the previous freight order. So what we had to do, and that was just
exactly that is what is happening. So if you open that snapshot, if you don't mind, just to show you what is interesting. Okay, so the one highlighted is the last stage, and on this one the proof of delivery was submitted, which propagated proof of delivery to the others. But however, now they are completed because I set status manually, but they were not completed at that time. But what I'm concerned is this execution status, which is in execution on these two. So even I set status as completed execution status, from the drop-down list that you have on execution status, you don't have any option to select executed. So this was the one of the few options. If you check on any freight order under execution status, if you want to manually set, there is nothing like executed. So you have a lot of different things, but not the one you need. So in this case, as you can see, these 3 stages, 3 freight orders, same delivery, X work, execution status remain like not completed. So I'm asking, is there any way that we can set all of this as executed?
Okay, so let's see, 2 things. So that is true. This happened during pit testing. And as a workaround, what we did was we added unexpected events in the other 2 freight orders that still say in execution. And we added an unexpected event for proof of delivery, and that would automatically close them. Now, we're not recommending you do that. And actually, if I'm not mistaken, you've said that you've tested this, right? I'm in my freight order. If you set the status and you set it to complete, once you've submitted all your events, does that change the execution to executed?
Well, it's changed the one that you are setting to complete, but not the previous linked one.
Okay, but then if you go to the previous ones and set them to completed, it would, right? It would set them to complete.
It would, but the execution status remain in something else. I set it to in execution because there was nothing else. So if you go to execution status, you will need to go out, I think, on the... You don't see it, or maybe it's you need to expand.
Okay, let's see.
Yeah,
so
So here you don't have executed. So you have a lot of different statuses, but none is executed. So I had to set it to in execution. That was the closest I could get to.
Okay, so I'm going to play around with this one. Okay, I'm going to finish up submitting all the events, take a look at CCP, and then we'll come back to this specific freight order and see if we can close it, okay, and see if we can change the status to an execution, or execute it, actually. That's the one we're looking for.
Well, I think if you would set proof of delivery here, this will close the one, but I don't know if you have any linked freight orders to this one, because the case I was showing had 3 linked freight orders. So if it's only single, yeah.
Well, yeah, this one is by itself, but it's still linked to the other 2, which are responsibility of the receiving plant. And it's actually good. I want to run through all of them and close them all completely and see how that works, okay, if one actually affects the other or not. So before I set the status manually for these, I'm going to submit all the events. And then when I get to my last freight order and submit all those events, I'll see what happens, okay, and we can check. Basically, I know here if we insert an event, we should have in the drop-down the proof of delivery, right? That will be my last resort if I can't seem to find a way around it. Okay, so we can get rid of this one here. Let's maybe submit all the other events in CCP, but let's go to CCP first and see how those have been submitted. Let's take a look. So we have our CCP screen here, the same freight order, and our events don't seem to have come through, right? So let's just close this and maybe add a little refresher here. And if we click on the freight order, we should now have the events submitted. It still seems like it's not. So let me go back to TM here and maybe save to make sure that that's done completely. So we can, I don't know if I can get rid of this line that keeps showing up here, but let me refresh. All right, and I'll cancel this. All right, that line still remains there, even though I haven't set anything there. That's also another one of those things, Sasha, about deleting events, right? We see if we can add that to the system too. If we make a mistake on the event, how we can delete it. And let's see in CCP if maybe now that I saved, it's going to show, because I hadn't saved. There you go, right? So we have our loading begin, our loading end. We have our custom clearance that shows actually in the Mombasa section here. For some reason, I don't see my departure, so maybe I can go back in TM and see why that hasn't been submitted. Maybe I missed a step. And if we keep scrolling down, we see our tour of events. So in CCP, vendors, freight forwarders will see our unexpected events as tour events. Okay, these are actually considered to be anything that happens in between departure and arrival. In CCP, you'll always have unexpected events submitted as tour of events. Okay, all the expected ones will always show under the sections here for the departure, source location, and origin location. Okay, so basically everything has gone through. My delay in departure came through. My document received for custom clearance was there. The dates are accurate, the time as well, even though it is showing here 1:19 p.m. and it's only 11:30, but again, this is still UTC, so this is going to show the time that is set up here, and the same thing with loading begin and loading end. So let me go back to TM and see. I didn't set my departure, okay? I just did custom clearance, loading begin, loading end, and my delay. Let me click on departure and let me submit that one. And let me report that event. So it's been reported, let's see, because it doesn't show. Let me save it, but it's not submitting it. Hold on. Okay, we have that. Let me see, report, and it's not showing the date. Okay, so let me add this date manually here, and let me say it departed on the 19th. And let's set the time. We said that the delay was 12:23, so let's set the time at the same time, 11:23. Okay, we have that. Let's report it now, and event departure reported, but somehow it's not saving it. All right, so let me just do this because maybe I'm having a, oh, there it goes. All right, fine. So it just took a little while. All right, so we have our departure now here. So if that was all done correctly, and let me refresh this, and let me go back to CCP and do the same thing. Go back. Let's do some refreshing here. Now the next open should change. You see, you also have the visibility here on the event. So the next open event now is arrival. So that means that in CCP, I should have that submitted. So departure is there too. We didn't enter a comment. Okay, if we enter the comment in CCP and say departure delay confirmation. Okay, we can set that and we can update the event. We basically will have now that comment in TM as well, right? The departure delay confirmation was added in CCP, although the event was added in TM. If you go back to TM, now you can refresh this. Let's see if we now have, see, the departure has a comment under event reason, departure delay confirmation. So all those comments that you add here under comment column in CCP will show up in TM under my event reason, okay? And vice versa. Whatever comments I add in document was here received for event reason will show up in CCP as comments. Okay, so we basically have all the events from the origin location submitted, and we have still to submit all other events here. Let's submit all these other events through CCP now, and let's also do that with adding our date and time for arrival at destination. We can say that the arrival was on the 20th. Let's add any particular time here, and we can enter a comment. Okay, and we can update the event. And this now should show our arrival destination fine. We can do the same for the unloading. We'll set the same date. We'll just set the same time, maybe just change a couple of seconds there, and we'll do the same for our next one. So we can do this all at the same time. Let's say it only took 15 minutes. We have that there as well. No issues. And here, no issues. Okay, so we basically have our events. We click on update events, and we're doing this through CCP now. We update them all, and we should now have all our events submitted for our first freight order. Again, there's no proof of delivery here because it's not the last stage. We only have one unexpected, which was a delay in the departure, and that should be okay now. And in TM, if we refresh, we should have all our events, see, submitted. We have them all now with green color, except the delay, which is the unexpected. We can see, if we see the source of execution information here, we can see that we have some recorded in this document, which means these were submitted in TM, while the others say received via CCP, collaboration portal. So we understand which ones were submitted by vendors, freight forwarders, and which ones were submitted by planners. We can see the difference between expected and unexpected with the icons here, and we can also read any comments that may have been added to each particular event. Arrival okay. No issues for unloading and no issues for unloading end. Okay, so all the events here are done, and we should have already completed our events for our first stage. So the TM planner in the issuing plant has finished his or her job. They submitted all the events, and there's nothing left to do here, unless, of course, we want to add attachments or add notes to this particular freight order, which is the next step in the role of the TM planners, right? If the TS07 wants to add attachments or add notes, we can do that in TM as well. So we would click on our notes here, and we can click on edit and insert a note. Will give us an option to enter the text type. We can make a selection of the text type that we're trying to add here. Maybe we just want to say that we're entering an execution comment. We can select our language. Now, the internal text box doesn't work here in the queue environment, but maybe in production it does. Basically setting the difference between keeping this text internally for only the issuing plant's planners to see, or keeping it unchecked so that the vendors and freight forwarders can see all the contents that we add. So basically we can see that we can say accept delay, delivery was okay. Let's see, and we can see where to see this text now in CCP. Creation and created date time will eventually populate as soon as I click on save. So you can click on enter, it doesn't do anything. We click on save, and now we should have our comment here. I don't know if it saved the actual content. Let me just write that again. Event okay, except for delay. Okay, and let me save that. Okay, there you go. So now the note has been saved. You can also delete it by selecting it and clicking on delete. Make sure that everything is fine here. Now let's add an attachment. Okay, we have the main note that we add to the freight order. These notes are always going to be related to the freight order in general, not to the events. Keep that in mind. The attachments section, again, in queue, the drop files doesn't work yet. I don't know if it works in production, but we can always insert the file by clicking on insert, clicking on file. We can select the type of attachment, if it's a legal document, link, rate table, or simply an attachment. We can add here a description for this, click on next, and basically you'll browse your own drive. So you see that the system will ask you to have access to your drive. You say yes, and here you can select documents except for PowerPoints and I believe JPEGs or PNGs. Any other file can be uploaded. So let's add the printer's configuration manual just for the sake of it. You click on OK, and you have your file attached. Okay, you can still change your attachment type before you save, and you can select your visibility if you want this to be internal or also external to see it in CCP. So let's select it external so we can see that later when I go to CCP. Everything looks fine. We have our PDF here. We can save, and the attachment should be saved without a problem. Let's wait for the system to finish loading here. Okay. It seems like it's okay. We can now go to CCP and see that what we have done, if I exit here and just go to the refresh, our next open event, see there is no next open event. It's all blank now. Let's click on the freight order to see it. And we have all our events submitted in CCP as well. The ones for the source and destination location, they're all submitted. All our comments are here. The delay is there too. We also have our attachment printer configuration in CCP here at the bottom. And our notes, if you guys take a look here at the notes section to the left, the one that I wrote was event okay except for delay shows here as well. Okay, so everything works fine. We have our notes, we have our attachments, we have our events. Everything has been submitted for this freight order and we should be okay with it. There should be nothing else to do for this one in particular. And now in TM, the execution status here should show that it's basically done, right? Or executed instead of in execution. Let's take a look and see what that looks like. If I go to my main page here, I'm going to cancel and I'm going to close my freight order. I'm going to go in TM and see here. I'm going to refresh and see if this freight order now shows executed or still in execution. And it still shows in execution here. Okay, so basically for now, Sasha, we still have the same issue, right? It still shows in execution. Life cycle is in process, so it's fine. Let's submit the events for the other freight orders. Let's go all the way to the end and submit the proof of delivery, and then we'll go back and see if anything has changed. And if it hasn't changed, how I can do this manually. Okay, so any questions so far? Let me take a look at the chat. Nothing besides Sasha's last comment. Yes, we have. Okay, that's an option, but still has to be set manually. I see. Okay, so basically, yeah, what we're trying to avoid is the manual updating of the freight order. We want the system to automatically change the status to executed when it's done. Okay, and we'll learn and see if this is actually the way it's supposed to be done or if it's always going to remain the way it is now. Okay, so let's log out, because the issuing plant's TS07's job is completely done, and we still have 2 freight orders to submit events for. If you have any questions on what I have done in CCP and TM, now's the time to ask while I log out and back in. I'm just going to close these windows, go and log out, and I'm going to log in as the receiving plant. Okay. And remember why I'm doing this. It's because it's an FCA scenario, so responsibility is shared between issuing plant and receiving plant. So now I'm the receiving plant's TS07. I'm going to click on Freight Order Management, Overview Freight Orders, and I'm going to search for my freight orders based on my outbound delivery. I can do so also looking for my STO. We have an option here for ECC delivery 209, and we have our freight orders here. And actually these two are assigned to MONUSCO. So we changed the initial freight order and we changed that to the freight forwarder. I think it was a scan logistic. And now what we're doing is we're submitting events, but we're doing it without changing the carrier. Okay, so we're going to keep MONUSCO there because MONUSCO is the one responsible for transportation. We're using a UN vehicle. So all the events should only be submitted through TM. Okay, let's do that. Let's submit all our events and let's see at the end what happens. Okay, so let's make sure that we're submitting events first for the main carriage and then for the on carriage. So we have Mombasa Port to Luanda Port. So I know that my first one is my main carriage and my last one is Luanda Port to Logistic Base. Perfect. So let's start submitting events for this one. And since there's no communication with CCP now, I can basically just go to the execution tab and start submitting events freely. Okay, so I'm clicking on edit and I can start reporting events here. Again, the time zones still haven't been changed, so I can do that. So I reflect the time zone that I'm using now. And let's see, that should change it. Okay, so now any reported event here should show the time right now and the date right now. Okay, let's expand this a bit. And that's the case, right? 20th December, and the time is 11:46. We have a load of events here. So we can start basically submitting events in chronological order. And we'll see that the custom clearance will change from the plan date to 18th to the 20th. And we can do so for every other loading begin, loading end. And now we have our departure. Okay, so we can submit our event for departure, but before that, let me just remind you of how to insert an unexpected event. Let's say that now in the handover location, there is an unexpected event. This unexpected event is a damage. Okay, in this case, let's say that on the 20th, and the departure time hasn't been set yet. The loading end ended at 11:47. So let's say that at 11:50, let's say, there was a damage in the location of the departure. So that's Mombasa Port, right? Luanda Port is the final destination. So we go here, we click on Mombasa Port, we say that some goods were damaged here, and we can report this event. All right, so now we have our damage here before departure. We can report the departure event. Again, we can do this manually by selecting from the calendar. We can set the date and time manually. We can do that here. So we have our 11:48 and 33 seconds. Okay, just basically going through this quickly. So we report our event. We have our first section of events submitted, and we can keep going. Okay, we can say document sent, reported as well. We can do document completed, same thing. And let's start submitting all the events. If you guys want me to go slower or go through the process of submitting events again, I just think that you guys kind of have the gist of this, so I don't want to waste all the time on repeating the same thing. I just want to finish up the event submissions for all of the freight orders, so we know that everything has been submitted and everything is fine. Again, remember, you can add comments to each one of these events. I only added one for damage, nothing else. You see that when you're done submitting events, they're all submitted in chronological order. You can always go back and say, oh, you know what? The date for the tax exemption is actually not the 11th of December, but maybe the 18th, 20th. Okay, the actual event will always represent the latest date and time. All right, so all these are done. We have our execution. Again, the attachments and the notes can also be added here for this particular freight order 901. So that's clear to us. We just click on save to know that everything has been done here. We can cancel and we can close. So basically all of our submissions have been done. We can refresh. And now if I look at the status, it should still say, there you go. See, in process, in execution. My last freight order still says ready for transportation execution because I haven't submitted any events for it yet. And in my last one is where I'm going to have my proof of delivery document. So I'm going to go through all the submissions. I'll click on the proof of delivery and let's see how that changes our status here. Okay, we click on this. Now we have our freight order open and we go to the execution tab again. And let's start submitting events. Let's see how many more I have hidden. So everything looks fine. Let's start submitting.
Sorry.
Yep.
Sorry, do you mind refreshing the screen for the freight orders? I don't think you refresh it. Maybe there are some changes. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. So I believe it has refreshed because it does say an execution now, which is the same one as the first freight order that I saw, that even though I submitted all the events, It does say in execution. It doesn't say executed yet. And the other one says ready because I haven't submitted anything. If it hadn't refreshed, this one would still say ready for transportation execution. For the rest, there's really no other way of knowing except for the changed on that I know that at 11:49 was my last change. So I know that the refresh seems to be working fine. I know that my last activity again is the 20th here. And last activity is also that, but this is for the change that I made in the freight order. I don't know why this one is actually showing the 21st here in this case. Something to look into. But for the rest, I think we're fine. Okay, Sasha, so I'm going to move on with the freight order here and start submitting events for this one. And again, forgive me for just going for a reporting event, but I think you guys have the idea already. We basically select each line and start reporting the events here. Let's say that the departure is also fine. Okay, once again, I'm going to add another event. These could all be realistic scenarios. Now, besides the damage, we have maybe a loss, okay, which of course this could very well happen. And in this case, this is for the loss in the departure from Luanda port. And we can say here some items were lost. I'm sure we have to be a little more specific. Some items were lost may not be enough. Okay, and we can report that event for loss. And we don't have the arrival yet. So we can now say that the arrival date is going to be the 21st. Okay, but again, it's in the future. So I don't know if the system is going to allow me to set the event in the future. We can say 10 a.m. It would be interesting to see if the system allows me to report this event in the future. So it does, okay? It does allow me to do it, even though today is the 20th. I can submit the event in the future, at least in the queue environment. We'll see what production does, because that should definitely be something that the system prevents you from doing. Okay, at least maybe in the past, fine, but in the future, that shouldn't be the case. We can then do the same for every other event. We can see the unloading. Let's report that. Unloading end as well. I'm adding the 21st to all of them. We have our custom clearance, and let's see, one more to go. Our proof of delivery. Okay, so this is basically our last event to submit, which should be submitted by a staff member in the UN, in the actual entity. So in the receiving plant, whoever has the role of the TS07, and I think we were discussing this as well, it should be somebody working in the receiving and inspection section, somebody who's actually there physically that receives this proof of delivery document that should have access to submitting these events. And we have our proof of delivery. We're just going to report it, and we're going to add the same date as the other events here, and we report it. So there you go. We have our proof of delivery submitted. We have our save here. We click on refresh. Just make sure everything we're doing is stated here. Fine. So I think everything is done correctly. We can close this now, and let's see the changes here. Okay, so I'm just going to click on refresh a couple of times, make sure it's representing the last refresh, and there you go. Okay, so the same thing is happening to me, Sasha. We have executed, completed, lifecycle status, but the other ones still say in execution. So it's not automated. Clearly, if we submit the proof of delivery, it doesn't close my other freight orders. And actually, what's more interesting is if I go back to my freight order here, what happens if I want to submit another event? If I want to say, okay, you know what? Well, I'm going to test. You can't?
Well,
Sasha?
try. I don't know, because everything seems to be locked.
It should say no, right? But basically, for now, it seems like I'm able to. And maybe I want to say loss here too. I mean, I'm just trying things. And the date, maybe here I'm going to even add. And again, queue environment, we're not in production. So what if I want to say that at Luanda port there's been a loss, and I report the event, and there it is. It is reported. loss has still been reported. At least that is still possible in the queue environment. Okay, production, this shouldn't be possible because if I already submitted proof of delivery, these other freight orders should be locked, unless you have to do this manually. Okay, which is something that we definitely have to understand. Okay, let's see now if I can go to the, let me expand this, execution status. Basically, there is no other option. They're all grayed out here. I'm going to set the status here to completed, and let's see if that is going to work. So data has been changed in parallel session, set manually in process to completed. Okay, let's see. Let's click out of this one here and we will refresh. And let's see what that looks like now. So it's lifecycle status completed, but it doesn't change the execution status. It only changes the lifecycle status. Okay, so let's see. Let me go back to my freight order and let's play around a bit more with it. Okay, so let's click on edit.
Now you cannot, once you set it to completed, sorry, once you set to completed, you cannot change events anymore. So you need to put it back in execution to be able to.
Okay, so I shouldn't be able to set, okay, very good. And the load plan, nothing here. Let's see. Let me set it back to in process. Okay, very good. And let me save that. And let me see what else I can do here to make changes. So I can't basically do anything else here. Backward scheduling, follow up, cancel unloading, send loading instructions. So no other options here except for maybe setting.
Can you insert proof of delivery here just to test? Because I think this proof of delivery should complete it, but just to test, it shouldn't be manually.
Yeah, that's going to be my last resort. I wanted to play around maybe first with maybe set to arrived. Maybe since it's the last event that we should submit in this stage, maybe that will close it. I'm guessing. I mean, let's see if I close that. If I set to arrival, I only have one event still, so that hasn't changed. My status is to set to arrive. Save. Let's see what that does here. I'm just testing any other option before I click on the inserting. It still says an execution. Okay, so now our last resort is to add the unexpected event of proof of delivery. Let's click on edit and let's do that. Let's insert an event and let's set this to proof of delivery here. Okay, and our plan date, our set date. Let's add the 21st because that was the actual date on the proof of delivery. I don't recall the time. The problem here is that we're setting the ports. So basically, I'm going to have to select the location here. And let's see if I report this event, the system takes it. It's there at the bottom, proof of delivery. Let me save. And now let me see what status I can select from the execution. Nothing. Okay, so I can't reset the status. So that in a way is good news. Let's see. Let me go back to my results page here. Click on refresh a couple of times and we go to, there you go. So now it does change and it says executed. So basically it seems to still be the only way around changing the status for each of the freight orders is to add the unexpected event proof of delivery for now. So this is definitely something I have to report. If in production it's the same scenario, Sasha, and it actually seems like it is, we may need to bring this up.
Yeah, good, but it's good to know. So I can now set up proof of delivery for the others and make it executed. At least workaround is there. Exactly.
At least there's a workaround. Very good. And that should be the same case for my last, for my first actual freight order. So if I go back to my first user here, 92, and I check my freight orders, my freight order should still be in execution because I haven't set the final. So let's see the final proof of delivery event. So I'm doing that quickly. This is my first stage from the issuing plant's point of view. We have it here. Let me click on that one. And I also want to see how this one affects CCP. So in CCP, if I go back there and let me refresh this one, I want to see if maybe the freight forwarder or vendor in this case has an option to say, you know what, let me add an event here and see if I can select proof of delivery from here as well. So there is no option for the vendor freight forwarder to select proof of delivery as, unless I'm blind here, but no, I don't see any. Okay, so there's no option here, at least in the tour of events, to set up proof of delivery, which is good news. Let's see if I can do it in my events by section here. Loading in proof of delivery. So yes, I can add this in the actual event source location and destination location. I can actually add a proof of delivery event here. So if by any chance I added it and I click on proof of delivery, imagine the vendor freight forwarder is the one setting this up. I'm just going to put the time right now. Okay, I don't think it's going to make much of a difference. Closing event. And I confirm. Now I should have my event here, proof of delivery. Okay, so closing event, everything is fine. I can refresh in both here in CCP, and let me go back to TM and see if I can refresh this delivery here. Let me close it and let me go back to my main screen. Here, I'll refresh and see if the execution status has changed. And yes, okay, so also that is something to keep in mind. If a vendor freight forwarder can submit a proof of delivery from CCP, it's going to affect us as well, and maybe that shouldn't be the case. So these are things that need to be definitely clarified, because now the freight order, sorry, is in executed status. Sorry, I can't make the words out. And I haven't done it as a TM planner. So I would go in and say, hey, I still have an event to submit, and it shows an executed status. So if you can't get rid of those events in TM, once you've submitted a proof of delivery, you should have an option to be able to delete it, which should be there if you made a mistake. I don't even think you can do it in CCP. If, let's say, there's actually no data now. Once I submitted the proof of delivery, it seems I can't even see the freight order anymore. So basically, from the end of the vendor freight forwarder,
can you click on close or cancel?
Yeah, I was going to go there now, because now in open, they're all done, but in closed, see, it shows the status here, check mark. Let me see if I can still access it and make any changes. It doesn't seem like I can. See, even the add events and update events is grayed out. So it's completely closed. I'm unaware if I can change the status from here. I don't think so. There's actually confirm next. I don't have an option here to change the status. Let me see if I have a check mark. Nope, nothing there. So my only way would be to go back to TM and get rid of that proof of delivery. If I could cancel it or set the status different, set to in process. Maybe if I change it here, I still have a way of making changes. So yes, it seems like I can. So the proof of delivery is still there as an event, but I can still submit more events. And then now in CCP, if I refresh or go to open, it doesn't show any data. So basically, I can still work on it in TM, but it doesn't seem like I can work on it in CCP. Okay, I can still submit more events. See, like damage. Let me just run that and see if it submits, and it does. So see, I can still submit new events if I change the status of the freight order, but it only happens in TM. See, I can still play around with this, but in CCP, they will still have their freight order as closed. I'm refreshing again and again, but it still remains closed. So once proof of delivery is submitted, the vendor freight forwarder wouldn't have access to the freight order anymore, but the TM planner could still go back, change the execution status, and play around with some of these events. Okay, so let me just add actually, see, I can't insert another event now again. Let me see, execution status, set to an execution. Or maybe it's because I'm not at the top of the page. So let's report that event. Let's save. Let me go back out and do this again. Okay, so insert event. Okay, very good. So I can still do that. Let me add the proof of delivery again. And I'll add the 21st just so I can close this and report it. Is mandatory when reporting an event? Yes. Okay, sorry. So here we go. And so now we have 2 proof of deliveries submitted at 2 different times. And now again, my status should be set properly here in my overview freight orders page to, oh, it's still set to an execution. Let's see if I refresh. Okay, so you see I'm testing the system and I'm testing things. Now I see that the execution status doesn't change with the proof of delivery, maybe because I've played around with it a little too much. Let's see if I go back to my set status, and now I probably have to, don't even have an option to change that. So maybe it's just taking a while, or maybe it's because I added it twice that the system is kind of going haywire there and it's not really closing the freight order for me. Okay, so anyway, this is what the session is for, to keep testing and see what the system does and how it reacts. So adding 2 proof of deliveries, setting and playing around with the execution status is now blocking my execution status for this one to an execution again. I could keep testing and seeing what would return the status. Basically, I think maybe if instead of playing around with my execution status, I play around with something else here. Maybe if I set it to completed, that's going to change it. I don't know. Okay, this is basically now I'm just trying things. Okay, so the session in terms of event submissions and event management is over. I think now we can start asking questions, maybe going over some things. I think this was a very valuable session. Thanks, Sasha, for that input of the status, because that is key to this session, is to see the status here. So now life cycle is completed, but my execution is still in execution. So somehow I'm unable to change it back to completed. All right, so let's see. One of them was here for Mombasa Port, one was for Unimid. There's no other option here for me to set the status anymore, even if I'm on edit mode. I could probably insert a new event, or maybe not. Let's see, set status to in process.
Brian, can you change the last proof of delivery to Mombasa instead of just the test?
Okay, the last one, the one that says Unimid for Mombasa, okay. I don't know if I actually can edit that one now.
You need to change the status to in process first, and then you will, no, execution, the other one, set status. It's not compulsory.
It's already in process. I already set it to in process.
Can you set another proof of delivery for Mombasa and just see? Just curious.
Exactly. Yeah, let's see that. And now instead of the location, we're adding Mombasa Port, right? Okay, and I'm setting the 21st as well. All right, everything is fine, and I'll report this event. Now we have 3 proof of deliveries, and our last one, sorry, let me just scroll down here. And our last one is Mombasa again, okay, for the latest one. So let's save that. We see that the execution status is grayed out, so far so good there. Let's refresh this guy and let's see. And it's executed. So yeah, it seems like the location is the key to the execution status, to be in executed status there. So the 2 options that I had, one of them was set for the source. Actually, the Unimid was the final, no, it was the source location. And then when I set it for the final one, for the handover location where the departure is happening, then it definitely changes my status of the freight order to execute it. So basically, you'd have to, if you add your proof of delivery unexpected event, you'd have to set the location for the last location, right? The destination location, not the source, for the status to change. So good testing, Sasha, definitely. So that's why the first time around it worked, but the second it didn't, and now the third it's working again. It's the location that we add. Okay, so anything else you want me to test and run through? Anyone? Anyone besides Sasha, or even you, Sasha, if no one else jumps in?
I always have. If you guys can inquire for the charges, if we have multiple handling units which are equal and the charges are split equally, is there a way to enter them all at once rather than entering one by one? And also, can you set default currency for all handling units at once?
Okay, so the default currency setup here, if I'm looking in TM, I shouldn't see, I can still edit some of these charges. So basically this is the scenario you're talking about. You have different handling units, but it's true that in this case you only have one freight unit. But nonetheless, if you have different handling units, you have to add the amount one by one. An option to add them all together, I do not see. Unless there's another way, multiple charge lines, charge line with logistical reference. This is definitely something I can test maybe in another freight order, because I do see here multiple.
What would be nice to check with the New York team, how these charges are later going to be used for the calculation, for the estimation and everything else. Is it sufficient to add full amount in one handling unit, or we need to split for each handling unit? Because it really depends how they will use this to calculate. If they're going to use it for the freight unit, then it can be entered at one handling unit, then they can divide the total volume weight by that amount, which maybe is useful. But if we need to enter charges for each handling unit, and I'm telling you, it's going to be a lot of handling units, sometimes you're going to lose 3-4 hours just to do that.
Yeah, especially in the case that you showed yesterday, that you had a ton of lines. If you had to do this manually for each one of them, you're right, you could spend a long time.
Change currency, and everything.
So I do see an insert option here that says multiple charge lines. Maybe I can play around with that and see. Charge line with logistical reference. If this is available before I close the freight order, maybe we can see that. And then for the currency, and maybe if I click on the icon here, I don't know if we have another option for a document to local exchange rate, local amount, maybe local currency option. Let me set that all the way to the top here, and let's see what that's going to show. But it still says the US dollars. I don't see a way of changing the view of that. Reset charges, maybe. Let me do that. Let's see. Now it's time to test. So let's play around with this and see. So now I've reset the charges. So the charges are at 0 for this freight order, which again, I'm making all these changes after the freight order has actually been closed, which I shouldn't be according to the way the system should work. Let me see if I can. These items are still grayed out, so they may not be implemented yet. But it's things that
change set status to in process, and let's see.
Yeah, sure. Let's go up here and let me just maximize this. Okay, so now we're back to in process. Let's refresh. Okay, I didn't make any changes, and now still not. All right, I'm saving. no options yet there. I reset the charges. So basically here again, I can change the actual charge manually. I don't see an option here, not even in the icon here. All I can do is add columns, remove columns, but there's basically no other option to group the charges, at least not here.
Do you mind trying select two actual charges on the left and see if this multiple works? Select.
Okay. What, the lines you mean? So actual charge here and then actual charge here.
Yeah, and see if anything happens. Insert multiple charges.
Oh, let's see, Sasha, not bad. All right, so multiple charge lines, let's see. Okay. I don't think this is what we want, but charge subcategory. I don't think any of these are what we want. Correct, and none of these are really what we're trying to achieve.
This looks like adding condition to the charges or something in addition. Try one because we just want to see what will happen.
The thing, I don't even know what to add there, to be honest with you. If I click on search, nothing's gonna. Okay, here you go. So if I click on search with nothing, I get this actual charge, terminal handling charges, adjusted quoted amount, bunker. So this is really just like a subcategory of the type of charges. So besides the actual charge, I can add terminal handling charges, adjusted, bunker, and currency adjustment factor. There's actually quite a number of them. Dangerous goods, estimated charge. Okay, so a lot of these are already there, but not all. So the basic rate, main carriage charges, that this could probably be a good option here. On carriage charges, we're in the pre-main on, so let's see main on, but I don't have any pre.
Can you just select the actual, the first one? Let's see if it's going to add additional column. That's what, because whatever you selected should add each column to each of these handling units, I suppose. You see, this is you selected. Okay.
It only added this in one, right? The terminal handling charges. Yeah. So it's an actual charge again, but it's a different description. Let's go again and let's see if I can, instead of the multiple charge lines, let me go with something else. Charge line with logistical reference. Again, right now it's all about testing. So I'm making a mess here, but that's what it's all about. Let's see. Custom clearance charge, scan logistics, sum. So the only thing I see here is the sum, but this is already looking better. But I don't see a field where I can add a sum. See, I basically can. I'm not sure if this sum option was there before. I don't think so.
No, it was there, and it's, you can see it on the header. You will have the total sum if you scroll up a bit.
So basically, what I just added now is exactly what? I'm not sure. Custom clearance charge, but this is linked still to this handling unit. So it seems like it just added one line here underneath each handling unit, but it has no description. That's what it did when I inserted the charge line with logistical reference. That's what it did, and now everything is grayed out again. So basically, a charge line would simply add a new line with no reference. If I want to add multiple charge lines, I can add multiple charge lines to, I guess, multiple handling units. But I don't see an option to, let me just reset the charges here and see if I can go back to scratch. And here you go. All right, so we have an actual charge, custom clearance charge, estimated charge, and for the other ones we have same. Okay, so now they're all looking the same. If I go to insert, all right, so I have to set the status again. Set to in process, or I'm unsure why the status changed. And let's see. Again, it keeps, I guess, setting back. Let's see. All right, so now the freight order is playing around with me. Okay, so I should be able to.
You need to select handling unit, not the sum. That's probably the issue.
Okay, so let me see. So let me go one package at a time instead of selecting the actual charge like we did before, right? Okay, sorry. So we select the 3 and then okay, there you go. But now I have no logistical reference. Interesting, okay. So what if I just click on the scan global? No, okay. If I go to the actual charge instead and I select, okay, now I have an option to do logistical reference. So the logistical reference seems to be active when I select the charges, but not when I see here I have all the options. Okay, but when I select the handling unit, the options change. Okay, multiple charge line and charge line here. Okay, so I'm going to select all 3 again, and I'm going to go to insert multiple charge lines again. And here we charge usage, charge type, but basically we have all the options. All the options are the same. Subcategory, category. Let's go with category this time. Click on search. And we basically get almost the same results. Basic rate, main carriage, pre-carriage charges. Okay, let's go with that one this time and see what that does. So we have pre-carriage charges. I'm just thinking if we want to add the total pre-carriage charges here, and we can add like a total amount that says, you know what, the pre-carriage charges for everything is this much, but maybe we don't want to add it to this line. Maybe we want to add it to the sum. Maybe if I select the sum, does it let me? No. And scan global logistics only lets me. Okay, it's probably set the status again. No, it's fine. Okay, now multiple charge lines. So if I go to scan global logistics, now it's graying everything out. And if I go to sum, I can't add anything. So I would basically have to do it. It would always seem like it's related to one specific handling unit based on what I'm testing now, instead of adding a new, or maybe I can add a charge line, but it doesn't let me here to add any charge lines here. If I go here, it doesn't allow me either. So I can only add a charge line if I go here, but if I add a charge line here, it's going to look like it's part of the handling unit and not a total. Because I think it would make sense to add a multiple charge line and even the category itself here, add the pre-carriage charges, and like that we have a name that at least makes reference to a sort of a total, and put the total here. So 250. If we click on OK, I don't know how that's going to affect that. And maybe we can remove the rest of the charges. And let's save that. But you see, at least it's not set up. It's not showing me the amount here. Yeah, so anyway, yeah.
So it looks like this insert multiple charges is just allowing you to add multiple from the list, nothing else, so which is not actually solving our problem. So you can just select multiple from the list that you have once you go for search.
Exactly. Okay, so I can just reset this. All right, and just for the sake of it, I'm just gonna make sure that I add the charges so I leave it nice and clean. This is just a habit of mine to leave it all as it was before. And anything else? Remember that you can add that. If you add just the charge there, what you're doing is you're multiplying by gross volume. If you want to ignore a calculation, you have to click on the check mark and you'll see how the total amount changes here to the actual sum of the charges you add here. So basically, Sasha, I mean, the total sum is going to appear there anyway. You're just not going to have it, you're not going to be able to add it totally here unless you just add the total amount in one of the handling units, and you're going to have the total amount there.
If you can clarify with the new guys, if it's sufficient to add the full charge on one handling unit in case of multiple, is that sufficient for them?
Yeah. All right, exactly. And then we can add the total amount. We can just remove the calculation, and that's it. And that's your total charge for the whole thing. Yep. Okay. So I'll definitely bring that up. Any other thing we want to look at? We still have half an hour for the Q&A. Okay, Elena is also writing in the chat here. My understanding is that the charges inserted here will not be used for calculation. So yeah, that's the idea, right? So these are just charges that we're adding to TM so that TM can become smarter as a system, and we can cross-reference estimated charges with actual charges. But basically, no vendor freight forwarder will ever be seeing these, or we're not going to share this with anyone else. It's always going to remain in TM.
Another practical question, which is business related also, that needs clarification, and it was never clarified. We can add attachments here, but still we are required to enter attachments in the inbound delivery. The reason being that those one entered in the inbound delivery is they are needed for RNI, for payment, for anything else as a document proof. Most of these people that would be able to see them from ECC would not have access to TM. So something that they need to clarify, do we still need to duplicate the effort and add attachment both here and in ECC in the inbound and outbound or not?
Exactly. That we definitely need official communication on that as well, because right now duplicating the effort on that plus all the other actions you're taking into TM, you're really extending your normal duties, and you're doubling everything you're doing. So we'll wait on communication on that, because so far I can't really tell you personally if stop at adding attachments to your inbound delivery document, because basically, as you said, those that are managing the inbound delivery document may not have access to TM. And maybe those that need to see the attachments don't have access to TM either. So yeah, I'll definitely ask New York to clarify that, and hopefully an official communication can go out on what to do. All right, Sasha, anything else from your part? Adrian, Rita, Jamil, I see there's more. Frey, I saw you there as well. Birgit, Gaston, if anybody has, Jamil, Valdet, Vedat, anybody that's there, I see there's at least 20 attendees. If you guys have any questions, now's the time. If not, we can cut it short. Okay, so let me take a look at the chat. I see somebody has written something. No questions, no questions, no questions. Okay, well, either it's because Elena and I have done a wonderful job throughout these weeks of training you guys, or you guys are embarrassed of asking them, or maybe you just want to see if Sasha has another one first. Okay. So Sasha, if you don't have any other questions, no one else seems to have any.
Absolutely, I know. I mean, it's obviously very few people are in, but you get these questions by emails every day, so I'm not sure why these other people are not on the chat. But anyway, thanks a lot. It was great, and it was good to test and to clarify these things. And season greetings to everybody, and thanks for everything.
Same. Thanks to everybody. Special thanks to you, Sasha, for the questions and all the interventions, and for showing us how to pack in the multiple handling units and making life easier for everyone else. That's added to the recording, by the way, so you're in that recording of that session, okay? And another special thanks to you, Adrian, for your interventions during the week too. And anyone else, thanks Gaston, Fanus, and anyone else that I'm forgetting for making our life easier as trainers too. Okay, so season's greetings to everyone. Enjoy.
Thanks, bye, you too.